Hey, what's up? It's Brett Sullivan, and that is called my movie chord. And so is this my movie chord. That's my personal movie chord. Today's video is how to find your movie chord. What are we talking about here with the movie chords? Well, composers are what came up with this beautiful classical music, right? But let's talk about guitars. Jimmy Page, Neil Schon from Journey, Van Halen, Steve Vai, and of course many more modern guitar players are now borrowing from this composer mentality. And so you can learn rock, you can learn blues, you can go to YouTube and learn licks all day, but when are you going to write your own music? When are you going to come up with an idea for your own solo, and how are you going to do it differently so that it's yours? Music is a gift to you whether you just play music or listen. When I was a kid, I was about 9 years old, I didn't play guitar, and all I had was a keyboard. I didn't know theory, I didn't know scales, I didn't know lessons. Now before you think this is an excuse to not learn theory or music or lessons, wrong. All it is kind of giving you a little hint that your ear is telling you what sounds good and what can be improved. So I sat down and learned some classical music. This song. Later on I learned that that's the minor scale. D minor. Later on I learned this is a scary, like, haunted mansion from Disney chord diminished. But it didn't matter because D minor diminished, it sounds great. Then later I transcribed that music on guitar, and then we started coming up with all these interesting ideas. Now Jimmy Page is my first memory of learning how to guitar player thought about music. And if you listen to the entire catalog of Led Zeppelin, why has that music survived till today? It's not just because it's a great band, arguably one of the best bands in the world. I think it's because the band knew how to reinvent itself year after year after year. And you as a guitar player, or musician, or solo artist could do this by listening to music beyond just what came out in the last 30 years. So let's start with classical music. When a composer comes to a producer and says, make this music sound good, he says, I need this mood. Well, that's where modes come in. Somebody said, learn the Ionian mode. I said, mode, what's that? Then later on I learned that modes are just moods. The Ionian mode, C major scale, is just a happy scale to me. Now we're talking about our movie chord. We're just going to jump right away to a mode that I think might help you guitar players out of a rut if you're looking for something new. The theme to E.T., C major, right? Okay, I could jam along with some type of background track in C major. But there's a certain sound in there I'm getting that we're missing right now, and that is called the Lydian mode. And that's this sharp, flat 4, I'm sorry, and that's this flat 5. You don't really turn on pop radio and hear this chord a lot. But I sure heard Joe Satriani play it at the beginning of Flying with the Blue Dream, right? I also heard Neil Schon use it a few times. I've heard Vai use it, and then again, like I mentioned, some of the more modern progressive bands are doing that with drop tunings. It sounds really cool. But let's stay on track before I digress. We want to go back to where it all started. Looking at the E.T. soundtrack, C major scale, right? I'm going to play a C major over that. Now here's a D major over C. And that just changed everything. All that is a C major scale with a sharp 4. C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. So that one little note changed everything from just being a plain everyday chord to the movie chord. Let's go beyond that. So we have the opening theme to E.T. Now we have a G. And we can go back to a guitar and see if we can play over that C over G, G over C. Looks like a C major is going to work over that. Then we have that tender chord. That's a D minor. And now we're talking Dorian mode, or just D minor. And then we go to C minor. And now we come back to that movie sound. Now that's a bunch of fancy chords in the piano, right? Wrong. It's just C minor again, and then back to that ending. Okay, so for a guitar player just learning a couple new scales, that could be something for you to think about. C major. All of a sudden you want to do something interesting with your solos, sharp that fourth. 4, sharp it, or raise it in theory language, or flat 5. Also, digressing for a minute, remember the metal players? Nice evil sounding chord that was forbidden in the early centuries, forbidden in churches. But then put a nice happy chord like C major. Here it is again in the second part of the ET composition. So here's a B major. We're going to sharp the 4th. So if you leave this today and you go and say, I'm going to learn like C, A, G, and then E. Make sure you sharp that 4th every time to achieve that, and you'll get that movie chord sound. Let's go and talk again about composers and what they're looking for. If a composer comes to me and says, I want you to write a movie, wow, that's a lot of work for a guitar player. Somebody mentioned to me, man, I need to know how to write a guitar solo. The drummer's head broke, the bass player's amp went down, and the guitar player was standing there, he said, and didn't know how to play a solo. Well, this is a way to reinvent yourself. Don't learn a bunch of scales, listen to music, and listen to something else that you haven't thought of before, or maybe something that's beautiful like this, and realize how much texture and color is in this classical music that you can bring to a rock audience or a blues audience or anything, just a little bit. So here we go, and this is what the composer said to John Williams when he was creating the score, Steven Spielberg. He said, first I want something happy and hopeful, and then anticipation, and then a little resolve, and then a little pensiveness, and then tenderness and loneliness to lonely. Tenderness, sorry about that, and then tension. Are we going to make it out alive? And then resolution. So look at all the thought that went to that. I guarantee you, all those guitar players I mentioned, Neil Schon, Jimmy Page, Steve Vai, Van Halen, Rush. Just think about Rush, that beginning of Xanadu. What an epic chord. So these are just examples that I'm using in rock that I grew up listening to, and I also grew up listening to classical music, and then eventually I put two together. Man, these composers that were out there for centuries made this music, and guitar players and great bands came along and picked them up along the way. Will you write a hit song using a chord like this? I don't know. I don't hear a lot of music like that in pop radio. I hear it on YouTube, I hear it underground, and of course all the progressive bands of the day did it, but maybe you'll figure out a way to do it. Just start simple. Start with that C scale. Think of that movie chord. All you have to do is take any scale, sharp that 4, and you got something interesting. I'm going to noodle around on the guitar a little bit. I'll just play the scale and sustain the pedal here. So you can get some ideas of what you might do with this, make your own guitar solo. Let's do something really bluesy with that. How could we do that? So a C, and then I'm playing a D. That didn't sound too good. Just using a couple notes. It's a little more bluesy, but so C major. Then we have D major over C. Sharp that 4, and you have that Lydian. And then C over G, or G over C. D minor 7 actually. Then C minor. And then A flat. C minor still works over that. And then C. So if you're playing, say you had some track, say you wrote a song that just went, your solo or your scale practice over that might just be like, and then you need to use your ear to hear your way out of that to go with that next chord. And then so here's how I do it. To go to that Lydian mode. So the next time somebody asks you about modes, if you don't know them, just think mood. That's just one mode. There's 7 more to learn. What I always tell students is find a song that you like, remember that song that's important to you for each different mode. This is Brett Sullivan saying, I hope you enjoyed my movie chord lesson. Cheers.